So this friction that you could, and again, this will be very easy to do. The frictions that you recognize are things that are pissing you off. They're aggravating you. They're getting your way. Oh, if they just get out of the way and let me do it. Awesome. Write it down. But the way in which you write it down, which of course will be probably not super positive, how can I change this into a positive? What would have to be true for it to be a positive? Now you have vision of it existing, but in a much better state. Yeah, so what would have to be true for this to be much better? And you probably have an inkling of this. The reason I asked that specific question is to get a little bit more out, because it's very helpful when you ask the next question. Do I have the capabilities? And the S stands for strengths. But do I have the capabilities? Or does somebody I know have the capabilities to make this a reality? And I hope it's somebody else. I'm not sure how many listeners have read the book, but it's a wonderful read by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy. Who, not how. For me, and I'm stubborn to have to make it practically applicable, nothing new without a who. So anytime I write anything down, I'm looking for someone else's initials to put after this new thing. Because if you guys are wired up anything like I am, I have plenty of ideas of how to make things better. And the list can get daunting. Not anymore, because my list has 2 columns. It's the thing, the vision or the awareness that I have, the potentials, plus or minus, and then who the heck is going to take care of that or do it for me or going to collaborate with me.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Hello, Team PYP. Welcome to the Play Your Position podcast. I'm your host, Mary Lou Kaiser, author of The River Only Runs One Way and The Far Unlit Unknown, 2 books currently available at your favorite online book retailer. Go check them out. Holidays are coming. They make great gifts. Today, my guest is Chad T Jenkins, a visionary wizard who knows how to alchemize friction into gold for entrepreneurs and companies all over the world looking to grow through innovation. He recently launched his latest book, Friction Fuel: The Secret to Listening Strategically and Leveraging Complaints to Keep Your Business Running on Premium. We talk a lot about his books. He has another one called Just Add a Zero, which I highly recommend. What's cool about Chad is he offers simple frameworks you can use to expand your leadership skills, as well as some practical exercises you can do today to tap into new ideas and an endless stream of innovation. Chad is part business strategist, part contrarian, and part philosopher who understands the power of collaboration. He also has his finger on the pulse of what's happening in business today, and I think you're going to walk away after listening to our conversation with a renewed sense of possibility and your own potential. Now, before we get into the conversation, I just want to remind you, if you want to connect with me online, I hang out on LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram, and you can visit my main website, maryloukaiser.com, where you can get on my email list, and that's where you can keep up with all the latest things going on with the podcast and my books and other creative ventures like songwriting, which I will share with you in a forthcoming episode. You can find Chad online at his website, seedspark.com. He's also very active on LinkedIn. But right now, if you could press pause and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, that really helps. And if you are ready for kickoff, I know I am, let's go. I want to start today with you talking about your latest book. I
Yes,
saw it on Amazon. I got an email about it.
Oh, wonderful.
And I know you have your other book, Just Add a Zero, and we'll get to that too. But
Okay.
why don't we start with, tell us about your new book, the title, why you wrote it, and how it plays into the whole leadership conversation that's happening today.
Sure. So the The friction fuel, as you mentioned, is the name of the book. And inside of it is containing an awareness and a guide to how to leverage friction, which we all have a bountiful amount in our lives, both personally and professionally, but a way to harness that friction for organizationally create unlimited innovation, separate yourself from the competition, and just play a completely different game. So you may recall from one of our prior conversations in the Just at a Zero book, there's a concept that I shared, which is remove the film.
And film stands for?
Friction identification, leverage the market. So the friction identification, leverage the market is just an awareness I had or observation over time. That's literally the way that I have found unique ways to enter industries with no prior knowledge, no experience, no formal education, no really understanding of what the pricing structure was in the industry, and make a pretty big splash.
I wanted you to, if you could, give a for example, but I think you're leading towards that.
Yeah, that's okay. Let's go ahead with an example. And I want to say a very reachable example. So way back when I was much younger, in the days in which I was in the horse feed trailer agriculture business, a very large store that looks like a Tractor Supply of today's time, a gentleman came by and wanted to sell me Nextel, which is a two-way radio type communication device that eventually did go by the wayside because of limitations in their network. But boy, it was good when it lasted. Instant communication, right? Anywhere across the US. And that was really impactful. So I immediately understood or related to the frictions it would reduce in my current business. And then I was intrigued and asked, hey, what do you have to do to be able to sell those? Because I'm pretty sure that's going to help a ton of businesses. And they thought I was a joke when that particular carrier came to look at this big horse feed store and agricultural store. They thought that I couldn't do that. 3 months later, they did return and said, we don't know what you're doing, but you're making it look like a little city outside of Charlotte, North Carolina is selling more than all of our direct sales force and our dealers in the entire city of Charlotte.
Wow.
And for me, it was very simple. It's an age-old rule, make it easy for people to do business with you. So a friction in that organization or in that industry was everyone who uses those phones were construction guys by default and first. Where are they? They're constructing. So knowing, I used to be on construction sites when I was very, very young with my father, and they would bring food around. Like a truck would show up and it would have whatever the flavor of the biscuits were, and people would run out there. I think they called them roach coaches or something like that. It was a very funny
roach
term.
coaches. Yep.
There you go. So think of roach coaches, but now they bring me my charger for my Nextel, maybe a new phone, because I just got hired on with a national home builder. And I just graduated college and there's 20 of us and we start Monday. Well, instead of them having to funnel and go to retail stores, I just set up the entire city like an ice cream truck route.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, ma'am. And so all of those neighborhoods where many construction professionals were, the grading contractor, the framing contractor, the roofer, the landscaper, the irrigation guy, the interior painting contractor, the drywall. And I could keep going on and on and on, but they're literally congregated, right? So it made it very easy for them to do business with me. So a friction there, of course, is whenever they're not in those areas doing their job, they're not making any money. So I just bridged the gaps, all I did. And I had a bunch of little Toyota Scions. This is back whenever they just launched it wasn't a sport utility model to me. It looked like a shoe, like a tennis shoe, Converse to be exact.
You did.
And I had them all over town, right? So, and I was the only game in town that even remotely looked at how to do business that way. So I just took over. And then I ended up buying the largest ones and got pretty sizable. But I'll tell you another friction in that particular industry, and most of us, anyone who has a cell phone can probably relate to this. Your bill was always messed up. If you took time to look at it, because you could hear the commercials like, I'm not getting that deal. And that's the true statement. You weren't getting that deal. So everyone's bill's messed up. If you have 2 phones, not as bad. 10 phones, 100 phones, getting a little bad. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000. Yeah, there's a lot of savings because the dots that were very simple to connect there, every carrier would change rate plans every month so that it was new and attractive. Everyone's usage patterns, there was commonality, But if you have people on your account, they have lives too. So their usage patterns are moving around. So I simply just played matchmaker. And I turned
Yeah.
it into, I think this service I charged $5 per phone per month. So if you had 100 phones, obviously you could do the quick math, but it became a $20 million annual recurring business. And it saved people millions upon millions. And who do you want to buy your phone from? The guy who brings it to you and is going to make sure your bill's right? Or the local retail store that the last guy who was in there probably doesn't work there anymore?
Yeah.
So friction identification,
Yep.
leverage the market. It's this, and that exists in every industry I've ever been in. I could keep going and on it, but obviously that's a couple really easy, hopefully easy to reach examples, and just know that you're empowered to do the same thing. So that was at the entrepreneur level. That's why I originally included it in Just Add a Zero. But if you think beyond that, and I've been fortunate to run and own so many different organizations, all different types, shapes, and sizes, I wanted to also release something in this friction fuel book, which is completely wrapped up with how to. And it's not just how to as an entrepreneur, though that absolutely is in there. It's a continuation of Remove the Film Just Expanded from Just Add a Zero book. But it also contains what I have now coined as the friction operating system. So inside of friction fuel, it became very apparent that all organizations are running on some level of friction fuel. Just as you were to pull up to a gas station, there's 3 different types. When an entrepreneur starts out, oftentimes they're in an organization or they're definitely in an industry, and they feel like they could deliver more value because they themselves have recognized the friction. It could be the way their product or service is being delivered by the company they're working for. It could be just something that's missing, an opportunity to create real value in an industry because they've been doing it for 25 years and no one has ever done this. And they finally get that entrepreneur courage up and they take a step out.
Yes.
So that to me would be classified as premium friction and turns into premium friction fuel because you're first, right? Nobody else is doing this. But let's start at the other end, the one that we're all very, very familiar with. And that just like you're going to pull up to the gas station, one could argue it costs the less at face value, but it actually costs the most. Your car does not run very well on it. It's not near as efficient. Very similar to your business. So if you're running on regular friction fuel, and everyone who's listening, if you own an organization, I promise you, there's some portion of your organization is running on regular friction fuel. And I have a bunch of those that I personally own that are running on regular friction fuel. These are the frictions that we're reacting to. They're the ones that you have to react to, right? Another analogy that I use often is like a train on a track. And you can hear a train, but you can't see it. And all of a sudden, there's a little light on the horizon. And when you see that light and you've heard it, you have a lot of options. You may even know somebody that manages the trains in your city. You could divert it. You could stop it. You could probably even have enough time to build another train track or send it down another spur. But if you don't do anything, that train gets a little closer. Same thing. You have options. It's getting closer. That's definitely a train. Not only do I hear it, but I really see it. And even the shape of the light, I can even make out that this is a train coming my way. And if I don't do anything about it, now the train is directly in front of me and I have to move. So that's the same type of interpretation of different levels of friction. The regular friction fuel, you have to move. Your hair's on fire. You are going to react today based upon this type of friction that your organization is running on. The mid-grade, or depending on where you live in the country, and you pull up to a gas station, the plus, and here I think it's called plus.
Yes.
The plus frictions, you're given bountiful of them, like you never run out of them. But most people turn a blind eye to them. They're delivered to you by another term, complaints.
Oh, okay.
Those are your mid-grade, right? So mid-grade, the complaints, if you have a system to capture them and to embrace them, you can turn those into unlimited innovation. You don't have to run on premium, and you can still leave the competition behind. Truly, you can, having a system to capture them. And the awareness that I had is, as an entrepreneur, especially starting out, you start out running on premium because you figured out a different way to create value than anyone in the industry. Like in some of the examples I gave, I didn't have any background in wireless phones at all.
Right. But you saw an opportunity. You
To create
connected the
value.
dots, and then
Starting
you
out with the
delivered.
friction awareness. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Yeah.
And rinse and repeat. So the mid-grade frictions, as I mentioned, delivered to you as complaints, they come from what I classify as 3 different hero targets to every business. When I say hero targets, it's not my language. It's actually Dan Sullivan's language with Strategic
Mm-hmm.
Coach. And it's, who do you want your business to be a hero to? Well, of course, everyone on the call, of course, knows the logical one is your clients, but there's more. Your team
Mm-hmm.
and your products and suppliers. So I always argue there's at least 3 hero targets to every business. So the awareness that I had is, as a starting an entrepreneur in many different organizations, I was the one that basically had to serve as the Chat GPT to understand the trending and the patterns to the complaints that I was receiving. And if I didn't have a system to that, I didn't have as much time to look out on the horizon and see that little baby light of friction of a train coming down the track so that I could just leave everybody in the dust. The friction operating system is a very simple system, and I'll share some of the attributes here because you could go and implement it today. Create the easiest mechanism for people who want to share with you something that could be better about the way you're delivering your product or service, you're placing your orders, you're receiving your orders, or maybe you're handling your benefits. Those are just attributes of the 3 different hero targets. And it could be something as simple as friction at yourcompanyname.com, or it could be a text code or a QR code around the warehouse. It doesn't matter. All of the above, the answer is yes. Get it however you can. Just get them in central repository. And then beyond that, I've created some custom prompts that you can access through the book that in my administrative staff in each organization once a week goes to that particular mailbox and or anywhere that's central repository. So in our HubSpot or Google Forms, pick your flavor. It doesn't matter. Just capture them. And they export those as a CSV or Excel, and they drop it in ChatGPT. So no longer do I, the entrepreneur, or my managers of any of the divisions have to be the one to interpret what's the real voice of those that we're serving.
Mm-hmm.
The top
That's
10,
really
the top 20
cool.
come out.
Yeah, because what just to kind of reiterate, so I'm following along, is your 2 books really are symbiotic, although they address different things. It sounds like your latest
Yes.
book is really looking at the power of complaints, the power of, I was reading on Amazon the word grievances, when people are unhappy with something about the way you're either delivering your product, you're serving your team,
Communicating. Yeah, it could be
anything.
anything.
Yeah,
Anything.
and we Americans, I think, have majored in complaining. You see it all over social media all the time. And what I like about what you're pivoting and say, instead of seeing those as bad things, see those as windows of opportunity for new
Indeed.
ideas, new products, new services, and then you're using the power of AI through ChatGPT to save time in basically coming up with an aggregate of, this is what people are complaining about most. And
This week,
this
this
week,
month,
this
this
month,
quarter, for the
yeah,
last year, right?
yeah,
You don't have to be the one, no matter who in your organization would be the one to capture these first, then interpret where we're going to put our time, our effort, and our energy, and actually turn these into value. Like, you don't have to
right.
be that person anymore. And then just by having a system, like is outlined in the Friction Fuel book, you empower the entire organization to do it. It's not on the shoulders of the entrepreneur anymore.
Mm-hmm. So let's plug these concepts that you have
Mhm.
into the leadership conversation. And
Yes.
as a human,
Mhm.
I know that criticism, complaints, grievances can sting.
Oh,
It's
sure.
sometimes you feel like it's a personal attack, like you're doing something wrong or you're not good enough, smart enough, fill in the blank, right? So
Oh, yeah.
when you present these frameworks, if you will,
Yes, ma'am.
to work with companies, and what if, in the case, the biggest complaints are about the leader? How do you
Mhm.
how what are some of the ways that you can recommend, for people listening who are thinking, man, yeah, our leader is just out to lunch, won't take
Oh,
any
yeah.
will not listen to the constant drumbeat of that train is about ready to hit us and keeps
Yes.
ignoring it. What
Yes.
what is your recommendation for, I guess, individuals, coming to terms with sometimes leaders aren't going to listen to that feedback. They're going to ignore the complaints. They don't want to hear them. They're just
Indeed.
going to brush them aside.
Yes, I appreciate you asking that question. I'll reference one thing that I've run. I've got this running list, and I would dare say it's 15 years old because I don't want to project that I feel that I'm much older. It's called True Wisdom. So, and I read a lot, consume a lot, and I try to stay as aware as I possibly can. And this True Wisdom, of course, you run across things all the time, and I add them to it, but I add them at the bottom. I have intentionality around the list. There's one at the top that since it was put on this particular list, it's never changed. The only thing that matters is someone's future and how you can help them create that future. That's it. That's it. So
that's one of your guiding principles?
100%. It's all value creation. And it's not about me, it's about you. It's not about me, it's about my team. It's not about me, it's about my client or my vendors and suppliers. You're seeing a common theme. So it's not about that particular leader in this particular business. It's all about that particular leader and how they see their future. Maybe they see their future not here. Maybe they see their future not in this business. But if I focus on them and ask them a couple qualifying questions and be very attentive and aware, I'll figure it out how they see their future. Now, once I do that, there are frictions that are being created because of this. Now I'm aware, I'm empowered. So I'm going to help them create the future that they want. And they themselves will self-select out of the position, if it's a team member, or out of the business, if it's a leader. And it's likely going to be a win-win for everybody. And instead of jeopardizing a relationship, because you may have a good relationship with the person, but their objectives have changed. Something changed in their life. And we don't know that because we see them a large percentage of the day, but that's not their entire life. And just being aware of that and also being in that right mindset can be very empowering. Because I tend not to lose relationships. Now, there's some things that folks do that I really don't appreciate. And a lot of times it's the perspective in which I'm viewing it.
Yes. Isn't that interesting how it always comes back to how we're seeing the situation? It's
yes, ma'am.
It's easy to point fingers and attach blame to an external source. And ultimately, it really is what's going on within. So it sounds like, Chad, that you've had quite a bit of success. You've worked with, like you said, companies and entrepreneurs from all different kinds of industries. You're really industry agnostic. You don't specialize in, say, fintech or real estate or agriculture, right? But you do have an agricultural background. I remember in a previous conversation, you told me the story about your youth and how this is going to lead into the question about how did you become the leader that you are? When did you realize or have the recognition that you were being called to do the kind of work that you are doing now? And I know that there's always layers to that, but let's go back to those early days when you recognized that big tractor store and all the construction people, and where do you think that came from? And then work that into you answering the call to leadership.
I think it's a wonderful question because this is something I've studied a lot as well. I am definitely, today I have what I call collab partners. So these are entrepreneurs all over the world that I help grow through the art of collaboration. Where does that come from? Right. So going all the way back, and I mentioned this is something I research a lot because I'm fortunate to be able to talk to all different shapes, sizes, industries of entrepreneurs. I've recognized a commonality. The way that we understand how we are uniquely created to create value in the world, the best I can tell, we learn it between 8 and 10 years old. Countless times, and this is, of course, an awareness of myself, and then now I'm inquisitive and curious, so I began to ask all these different entrepreneurs. And sure enough, when you peel back the layers of the onion, and I'm not talking about the title in their email signature or the letters after their name, or even the sign on the door, like, no. You're a plumber, I'm a plumber. Bullcrap. The way in which you plumb and the way in which I plumb are vastly different, and they're unique to ourselves. So for me, when I was around 8 years old, and this probably stemmed from a conversation at elementary school where somebody probably, most likely, and I'm sure most of have heard this, my dad makes more than yours. I'm like, really? You think so? Obviously, I said no at the time. There's no way. And then I became very curious, and I think I even made up the number. But when I did, I said, well, good Lord, if he's making that much, what am I going to do? How am I ever going to do anything that's that much or more? And now I know that based upon a bunch of profile studies, I am built to succeed and achieve. And at the same time, for everything to be correct, right, and perfect. And it's like foot on the gas and foot on the brake at the same time. So that was instilled in me because it's my two subconscious motivators at 8 years old. So fear and greed hit me at the exact same time, the two motivators for any human on the planet.
Wow.
And I grew up on a farm. You mentioned that little bit of agriculture background. So growing up on a farm, I was probably putting up barbed wire fence or bush hog out pasture. And when it hit me, it's like, there's no way I can do anything. Like, I got to figure this out. And it made me in that very second start looking at the world, what I now know is a little bit differently. So when it seems the convention of the world and folks in it, when they look at things, it's more about the label that's assigned to it and the interpreted value that it's going to create based upon somebody else telling them that. At 8 years old, you don't have that luxury.
No.
So I look at things as I call it their authentic expression. And it's what can I use it for to combine with something else to create new value. So at that particular time, the first way I figured out how to make money was I could take the skill set that I had growing up on a farm, the frequency that I went to these sale barns where people wanted to sell their horses, and I could take my skills and the person who wanted to sell their horse and combine that horse with me, run it through the sale barn. You can see a lot of collaborations going on here. And the person in the stand would typically raise their hand more often and pay more money for it because they themselves thought that they could ride that horse just like this little peanut kid. Not 100% true all the time because I have decent skills and I've been riding since before I could walk. But that collaboration and understanding, how can I take this friction with what exists already? Okay, what are the facts? Well, we have 100 trucks on the road. We have 24-hour call service. We have all these things, and this friction, we can massage those, be in collaboration with that friction, create new and unique value, and it's highly possible, not only service our clients and customers better, but we remove ourselves from competition. So it's funny that you asked that particular question. You said potential earlier. And yesterday I did what I call a collab forum. I do these twice a month for my collaboration partners all over the world. There's between 40 and 50 different entrepreneurs that showed up. And we were unpacking another concept and a tool that I've created that I do on a daily basis. And the tool is named Daily PSA, Potentials, Strengths, and Actions. So the potentials portion can be pluses and they can be minuses. Because when we really look backwards, no matter what age you are now, when you look backwards and you think about the things that were done to you, but if you really think about them, they tend to be done for you.
Yes. So
a brain hack that I use on a daily basis is it's totally fine to embrace exactly the way your brain is going to respond naturally. And I have no education. This is just me being me. But it's a lot easier for me, and I've recognized this, to look at the negatives and just write them down. So negative potentials, totally fun to write them down. Now it challenges you and yourself and that big old brain that we were all given to turn what you see as negative, just reword it and make it a positive, right? Because if it does only perspective, how about you just change our perspective? And let's do that in a quiet place at the beginning of our day. And then what strengths, now you're seeing how this tool actually works, potentials, plus or minus, start with the minuses is fine, reword them to be positive, pluses. What strengths do I have? Or what strengths do people that I know have? Now you're seeing another commonality of collaboration, right? So if you really think about it, you've been collaborating before you got here. Collaboration is everything. You and I are collaborating with Zoom. We're collaborating with this microphone, the headset, the internet providers. It's all a collaboration. So based upon that awareness, what's really holding us back? It's just our vision and our perspective. So potentials plus or minus, change them to be plus, just reword them. Do I have the capabilities or does somebody I know have the capabilities? And then what's the first action I can take?
Yeah.
That's another flywheel that can get you moving, or at least it does for me and a lot of other entrepreneurs on the planet on a daily basis.
Yeah.
It's halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and we've got ourselves a great game. While you're up grabbing another snack and topping off your favorite beverage, make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss another play. PYP is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever great podcasts can be found. Now, let's get back to the game.
And it really is a daily discipline because we can, again, being human, we can fall into the I got this kind of trap of we've been doing something for a while, becomes automatic. We're not on that learning curve, but by sitting down and doing a daily PSA, it's challenging you to not become complacent. And I think complacency is the death of really any enterprise, any forward motion at all. And at the same time, we can't constantly be in forward motion. There has to be that ebb and flow of time when we're accelerating and chasing a new idea and being excited about whatever we're innovating. And then times to sit back and reflect and recharge and regroup and say, okay, where are we now? And I see you based on our conversation so far today as, I don't know, kind of like a wizard of sorts, because you have the ability to connect dots, which not everybody has. You also have a contrarian streak because you tend to see like things that aren't obvious to people. And you look at the things that people would naturally recoil from, like complaints, or even some people recoil from collaboration because of those two motivators. You said fear and greed. I want to be recognized for this, not the group, right? Or
oh my goodness,
and if I let other people in, I'm going to have to share the spoils, and that can get in the way of
it does get
progress.
In the way. And you mentioned this complacency earlier. It's such a great comment. Just add a zero. I'm sure there's many entrepreneurs that are listening, leaders. Take your P&L and export it. Put it in Excel. Add a zero to all parts of it. What's not going to work? Your brain will tell you what's not going to work. You probably three things came to your mind when I just told you about the little exercise. But it will empower you to say, yeah, there's no way our uniforms are going to cost that much if we grow the revenue by this. That's right. Maybe you don't have that many people in admin staff, or you're not paying that much for insurance, or your square footage. Like, we could grow to this and we don't have to expand our facility. Oh, so what you're saying now is you could actually do that, right? You're empowering yourself, but there's going to be things on there that you can't because you don't have those capabilities. Now you're seeing the piece that helps by just expanding the vision, that drives them to a place that the only answer is collaboration. I have a little exercise that you can do yourself, of course, but because everybody has goals and dreams. If you can jump in this time machine with me, and I'll take you to the future in which this outcome, and you put the time, 5 years, 1 year, 10 years, it doesn't matter to me. And we look around, we get out of the time machine and we look around, and this new existence, we'll just take that, add a zero to your P&L just as an example. So now you're 10 times the revenue that you were. And we look around, every one of these outcomes that you want to create have winners. All outcomes have new hero targets. So whenever you're aware of that, and we're outside of this time machine, I'm going to have a little pad and paper, which I'm not a person that uses a lot of paper, but maybe I'll grab my Apple Notes and I'll write down I'll write down all the folks that you have now shared, you with your awareness, you shared with me are going to be a winner to that outcome. And now we're going to jump back in the time machine. We're going to go back to right now. And I'll say, okay, based upon the awareness now that whenever we get to 10 times more our revenue, we're going to have maybe we're getting a tax break from municipalities because we do events, or maybe we're getting 6 hotels in your local market are now definitely collaborating partners. But you're basically painting the picture of this future outcome, and now you're empowered by it. Well, why are we going to wait until we feel, to circle back, premium, regular, or mid-grade frictions when we could start today and run our organizations on premium friction? So vision is the catalyst, but you have these capabilities. It's just connecting a couple dots.
Right. And helping people paint the picture, because my experience has been, and I'm sure yours has too, that not everybody can do that.
True.
There's something about, I don't know, I think some brains are more wired to being able to imagine. And imagination, I've read numerous times, I think Einstein said, imagination is the greatest power in the world. If you can imagine something, it already exists.
That's true.
If we start going deep into, different kinds of philosophical frameworks or thought leaders who look at metaphysical stuff,
Yes.
I don't necessarily want to go down that lane, but in general, there are people in the 20th century thinkers who, Napoleon Hill was one of them. Think and Grow Rich. If you can imagine it, it can become, as long as it's within your nature. Because there's always people who say, well, I'm 55 years old and I'd like to be the quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs. Well, that's not in your nature, right? Like, so it's not trying to burst your bubble. It's trying to align, do the dot connecting that you're doing.
Yes.
Paint the vision of, okay, so you can't be the QB of the Kansas City Chiefs, but maybe what is it about that attracts you? And then perhaps build a picture around the elements of that. Maybe it's more attention, maybe it's physicality, maybe it's being a leader on a team, So
there you go.
I like what you're sharing. And so let's go back to the leadership conversation for a second. For people listening, they're thinking to myself, well, I'm a realtor, right? Or I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm running my house, or I have an idea for, I'm working for a company and I see the friction.
Yes.
But I don't know if I have the gumption to step out and take that leap. Do you ever work with people like that, or are you more with established organizations? What would you say to those people?
Those people are entrepreneurs. I think every one of us, we're put here to create value. The conventions and the default societal norms where our dreams get a little squashed, the imagination that that you can look back and you had as a kid, we all had, that begins to shape you to put all these blinders up. And I have given you the keys to unlock the kingdom earlier. I mentioned earlier during our time together that vision is the catalyst. That friction that you are aware of in your industry, in your position, in your role, maybe, we'll go back to friction identification, leverage the market. This friction that you're aware of, this vision that you have, the leveraging the market was, how many people is this going to affect if I put my time, effort, and energy around solving this friction? And that's my reference to, it could be in your company, it could be in your position, it could be in your industry, it could be in your position in every industry. The old me, I'd go and start a business. The new me, and I appreciate you asking that question, I only engaged with my collaboration or collab partners and growth partners. So I have a lot of vision and they have organizations. So together in collaboration, we split the outcome. So I mentioned that I gave you the keys to unlock the kingdom. And earlier in our conversation, I mentioned that collaboration is everything. I've not yet found a person on the planet that can refute that. We all collaborated to get here, right? It took our mother and our father. And then it just starts from there. So if you have this vision and your obstacle, you'll often hear me say the obstacle is the way and collaboration is the way through it. Now you can interchange obstacle to friction. So the friction that you just discovered that you've probably been complaining about yourself or your significant other or to your friend across the hall, that literally is a new way that you yourself have vision to create value. But the good thing is you're not going to do it all yourself. So I can't do that. You're right. 100% right. You can't do that. But there are people around you that don't have that vision, but yet they have the capability. So entertain the art of collaboration to create this new existence of yourself. Jump in that time machine, go to the front, go to the future, whether it's 1 year, 1 month, 3 years, get out of the time machine and look around. Who's going to be a winner when this becomes the current reality? Those you've identified now are your collaboration partners. Now, if that doesn't come natural to you, of course, like that, I've created an entire global entrepreneur collaboration, Seed Spark Growth Partners, and the collab for that exact reason. Just There's resources all over this planet. And I do certainly, of course, I do really enjoy working with growth-minded entrepreneurs that are at a level of vision, but they have inside of them a much higher level vision. And I've tried to create mechanisms that have supported me along my own journey, and I just share them with them. And then we split the outcome.
Yeah, it's getting over the idea that you can do it all yourself, which
Yes,
is
definitely.
an inherent American value, or has been.
Yes, the rugged individualist
The
is what we
rugged
call it.
individualism, the lone cowboy or cowgirl, as the case may be. And yet they're even a cowboy or cowgirl is collaborating with their horse.
Yeah, so
you're not
I used to
you're not
team
out
rope.
there alone.
That's correct. I used to team rope just before I entered high school until a few years after high school, all around the country, national finals, high school finals. So in that, team roping is quite an interesting sport. It's really interesting what I do now in collaborations with entrepreneurs all over the world. I started a long, long time ago because, to your point, I collaborated with the horse. I collaborated with another human who was on another horse, and a cow, and the person pushing the button to let the cow out, and the person who was going to drop the flag whenever we did what we were supposed to do. And somehow we were able to pull it off in just under 4 seconds. Is the fastest I was ever able to do it. It's a big collaboration. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you yourself, whoever's listening, you're already collaborating. So just embrace it. And you already have this vision, and you're already aware of frictions.
Yes. Yeah. So would you recommend that one of the takeaways from this conversation is for the listeners to sit down and along with the daily PSA, which is a great little tool, but to identify some current frictions in their work life. And again, I'm a very visual person, and very strong imagination. So I always imagine a big whiteboard or a big easel with a big piece of paper, and I'm drawing out all these different connecting bubbles, mind maps and stuff. But I think to me, that would be a really, I'm actually going to do that when we're done talking today. So I'm going to, because it's fresh in my mind, is I'm going to think about the work that I do. Podcasting is part of my work. It is not the only thing I do. And come up with, I guess, 3 to 5 frictions. And then what's a question that you might ask a group? If you were leading a group in this exercise, would it be something like, okay, now where's the opportunity in the friction? Or
I appreciate you asking that. So this friction that you could, and again, this will be very easy to do. The frictions that you recognize are things that are pissing you off. They're aggravating you. They're getting in your way. Oh, if they just get out of the way and let me do it. Awesome. Write it down. But the way in which you write it down, which of course would be probably not super positive, how can I change this into a positive? What would have to be true for it to be a positive? Now you have vision of it existing, but in a much better state.
That one question, what would have to be true for this? That is such a powerful question. It's not one that we're taught in school. That really can get to how beliefs and perceptions are clouding our progress. Okay, go ahead. Then you would ask what?
Yeah, so what would have to be true for this to be much better? And you probably have an inkling of this. The reason I asked that specific question is to get a little bit more out, because it's very helpful when you ask the next question. Do I have the capabilities? And the S stands for strengths. But do I have the capabilities, or does somebody I know have the capabilities to make this a reality? And I hope it's somebody else. I'm not sure how many listeners have read the book, but it's a wonderful read by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy. Who, not how. For me, and I'm stubborn to have to make it practically applicable, nothing new without a who. So anytime I write anything down, I'm looking for someone else's initials to put after this new thing. Because if you guys are wired up anything like I am, I have plenty of ideas of how to make things better. And the list can get daunting. Not anymore, because my list has 2 columns. It's the thing, the vision or the awareness that I have, the potentials, plus or minus, and then who the heck is going to take care of that or do it for me or going to collaborate with me. Because likely whoever has the capability, they don't have the vision. And then the last piece is, what action are you going to take? I don't want to write anything down if it doesn't end in, here's the very first action I'm going to take, which could be reaching out to the initials that I put by the thing, and I'm going to share with them my vision.
Okay. Great walkthrough of an exercise, team. I hope that this is helping you think about where you're currently at with whatever projects you're working on, whatever industry you're working on. This is industry agnostic. Take some time to identify what pisses you off. Those are your friction points. And then ask those series of questions. How can I change this into a positive? What would have to be true for this to become a reality? And then, do I have the capabilities to do this? Or, as Chad just said, hopefully it's someone else. You're going to put some initials of people in your circle, or perhaps maybe a couple of circles out that you might know casually or follow on social media, that you know for a fact that their specialty or some area of expertise could be the catalyst for you moving forward. Now, follow-up question here. For those people who are stubbornly, ruggedly individualistic and have a very hard time asking for help, because that's what collaboration is in a way, is saying, I need help with this. And for some people, asking for help is a point of shame. It feels like I'm not good enough. What's wrong with me that I can't get this done? And many entrepreneurs have that, I'm going to wear every hat. And in the beginning, we often do. Today, I'm wearing my marketing hat. Today, I'm wearing my podcasting hat. Tomorrow, I'm wearing my writing hat. Now, I'm wearing my networking hat. I mean, it's endless and it's exhausting. So what advice or wisdom, Chad, do you have for people who have a really hard time getting to that? They may put initials down and then they freeze because I don't know how to ask.
So, wonderful question, by the way. Knowing that we may feel like we're rugged individualists, we're collaborating with something, be grounded there. This initials that you stuck after this vision that you now have, that you possess, you came up with the secret sauce. Any of my collaborations, I split the outcome. So don't be afraid. Please stop doing what you're doing, because it's slowing you down so much. If you are the person that can recognize the friction, you're able to do something a lot of people are turning a blind eye to. So just that change in mindset should empower you, because you can't look at the world the same way. And you're going to be seeing so many frictions to create so much new and immense value. The only way you can create this reality is through leveraging the art of collaboration. Here's the catalyst. Split the outcome with them, because they have the capabilities. Here's one thing that I became extremely aware of, and as well, it empowered me a lot. Whatever you want to do, whatever you have, whatever friction you're dealing with, you are literally the answer to someone else's question on this planet. You are. So just putting it out there in the universe, to your network, to your people, and potentially on social. I don't really do a lot of social media, but to maybe social, and saying, hey, I want to accomplish this, or I have this additional capacity, or I'm really struggling with this. There's somebody right now on a Zoom call talking to someone else saying, man, if I could just find the opportunity to do more of X, it literally is not even like work to me. But they don't have the vision to find the X in the world. With what you've learned today, you do. So start giving yourself credit and leveraging these concepts, and leave everyone else in the dust.
I like that. I like that positive message. Nice way to kind of bring us into a landing here as we start to wrap things up, Chad. I can't believe the hour is almost up. This has been, you've shared so much value. You've collaborated with me and my audience here at the Player Position Podcast. So before we come to the end, I have a couple more questions for you. The first one is, outside of your own books, which there will be links to get your books on your show notes page at pyppodcast.com. You also mentioned Who Not How. That's another book. Is there a book that has been a guide for you over the years and that you consistently return to and see it differently every time you open the pages because you have grown and evolved?
We don't have enough time for all of those.
I know.
I'll give you.
Right?
I'll give you a couple that I reference just often. There's one called the Like switch. And it's an FBI and a CIA retired, two guys. And it's just awesome. And it's so much about human behavior. I go back and read it, listen to it, all of the above. I don't listen or read things that I don't invest the time to do a book report on, because I want to make sure I get it deep in my brain and kind of imprint it. I always find new stuff to add to my imprint. So
I love
the
that.
like switch, it's a little small book. The Go-Giver,
Mm-hmm.
amazing
By
book.
Bob Berg. Mm-hmm.
Yes, amazing book. One that I am way down the rabbit hole on currently, which is so empowering, Clarity. Jamie Smart, if I'm not mistaken. Jamie Smart. It was released in maybe 2020 and then revised in 2023. I would suggest the answer is yes, both of them, but 2023, total ton of nuggets. And then because, and you're seeing a pattern here, my daughter gave me a book. It's probably the best present I've ever received on Father's Day. And it was Super Communicators by Charles DeWitt. That's an awesome book. Are we having a social conversation, an emotional conversation, or a learning conversation? Decision conversation would be a better way to put it. Because the answer is yes, and likely the answer is yes on all three. So the faster you're able to pick up on that, the faster you're able to create value for someone else. Because a lot of times you're speaking Japanese and I'm speaking Chinese, and we're both right. But the quicker we can bridge that gap, the quicker we can get on the same page and begin to collaborate with each other and create a lot more value for each other. So that's an awesome book, Super Communicators.
Great.
Yeah.
So I'll add these also to your show notes page because leaders are readers. And I know I've gotten feedback from listeners who say they always appreciate when guests share book, I'm like you. I have so many books. I'm looking out at my, my bookshelves and thinking, I've got my books right behind me here, and we're always learning, right? Always be learning, ABL,
definitely.
right?
Yes,
So with that said, just a couple of housekeeping things. Where do you hang out online? You say you're not really on social media. Do you have a website? And if so, what is it?
Yes, ma'am. Many different websites. Book-wise, just add 0.com can get you to that. Amazon, of course, is very easy for them as well. Frictionfuel.com. My collab partners is under my brand Seed Spark. So Seed Vision, Spark Growth is, of course, intentionality around naming. There you can actually find a couple of the tools. So we do release some of the tools out in the public. There's a very intentional naming tool there called Name the Baby, which is used anytime you create something new. Just like the world is the first job God gave Adam, name the animals. So it's very, very clearly obvious that we would never do that at home. We would never have babies and not name them, but we do it in our business every day. So you can go to seedspark.com and access some of the tools that we make public there. And it talks about the collab all across the world, the global entrepreneur collaboration. And there's Chad T Jenkins. But the social piece that you mentioned earlier, we are quite active on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So I'm very fortunate to have just a wonderful team that takes my concepts and works with me on the messaging and then presses the post button. And I appreciate them doing that. But and of course, we all respond. So I love the messages there. There's a lot of ways to create value through that platform. Yeah. The Facebook is another. Those are just not really my gig, but LinkedIn is great. Yeah.
Well,
I
wonderful.
wanted to offer to you as well, Miss Mary, is this PSA tool, low-hanging fruit. And I was really surprised at the adoption through the very high-performing entrepreneurs that I engage with, though it's provided me so much value, is as a gift to you guys. I'll ensure that one of my team members sends you the PDF version of the PSA tool and the guide. And they'll have that to you later on today.
Wonderful. I appreciate that. And team, I encourage you to get into Chad's world. Obviously, he is a wealth of wisdom and has some really great insights about human behavior, contrarian approach to solving problems. And I would recommend his books as well as the books he listed, which will all be on his show notes page at pyppodcast.com. And before we say goodbye, Chad, is there anything that we didn't talk about today that you would like to share before we wrap up?
Just remember that better is infinite, and you personally have so many more capabilities and so much more vision, so much more capabilities than you're putting to work today, let that friction be a guide. That's it. Just be all that you can be, because you have a lot more.
I love that. Let friction be your guide. I think that's what I'm going to name your episode. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
cool.
fantastic.
That's
So,
awesome.
Chad,
Yeah.
thank you for your time today. I know on behalf of Team PYP, we appreciate the work you do in the world, and I know I certainly do. I've I've got 2 pages of notes with a pen on paper, and
That's awesome.
I just wish you all the best on as you continue your leadership
Yes,
journey.
ma'am. Yes, thank you very much. I very much enjoyed it, and be happy to do it again. I've got 3 new books on the way. One that's going to be super impactful is a little formula a friend of mine created. Vision. He originally created vision plus capability multiplied times reach. And I would strongly argue, because of my stubbornness, that it's vision multiplied times capability times reach. So this book is very similar to what we grew up with as far as naming, VCR. I assume all of us had one when we were a kid. Obviously, it's not exactly what I'm talking about, but now you'll remember it when you see it. It's VCR, and it's just a VCR formula. So that one, if you'd like to read, and you also like formulas that create outcomes, that book will be very, very huge. So yeah, I look forward to it coming. Thanks so much for the time today.
Hey team, Mary Lou here. Who's number one in football changes from year to year. Fast and go, same with musical tastes. But leadership skills, they never go out of style. In fact, these days, leadership is an essential survival skill for a world that demands more from us than ever before. To succeed these days, you need to know how to show up for yourself so that you can then do the work you like the way you want. The Play Your Position Leadership Playbook helps you do this, and it's free. Go to pyppodcast.com to download your copy today. If being more successful this year, next year, in the 21st century is on your to-do list, get your copy of the Play Your Position Playbook now. pyppodcast.com. It's at the top of the page. You can't miss it. That's pyppodcast.com, and start being more of the leader you are meant to be today. This podcast was produced by Daniel Romeros. Show notes for this episode can be found over at pyppodcast.com. I'm Mary Lou Kayser. Thanks for listening.
Here at the Play Your Position podcast, we believe that the road to self-mastery and a life well lived starts with answering the call to leadership. That's when the fun really begins. Send this episode to any friends who might need to hear the inspiration and ideas you heard today. And feel free to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.